Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Not Reading for Content. We are continuing with our translation season, and the book that we are reading is The Dallergut Dream Department Store by Miye Lee. This is a translation from Korean. It is a new to me author, new to me book. Meanwhile, Danny is rereading the title with us, which is super exciting. And we should have read the chapters 4, 5, and 6 for this episode. So if you haven't read that, probably pause after our bookish bite, after maybe a little bit of the summary, and then you can always come back and listen to the rest. Speaking of the bookish bite, though, we have another one to discuss, and this remains in the kind of realm of cozy discussions. So, Danny, my question for you today is, what is a cozy book, a cozy subgenre title that is on your radar and you've been meaning to read?
So, I have a couple, but I'm just gonna talk about one, and that is Guard in the Garden. This is actually a recent purchase of mine, and I purchased it based off of the hype. It's like all over Instagram and YouTube, and I'm hoping to really enjoy it. But this is about a dwarf warrior who ends up getting injured in a war that he is in, and because of his injury, he's no longer able to continue with his compatriots. He can no longer participate in the battles that he is used to, and he is sent home. And this story is kind of about him dealing with having to change his life. So I think it sounds super sweet. I also believe that it was written by a veteran. And so I'm interested to see that perspective on page. What about you?
Ooh, yes, that is on my radar as well. I definitely want to read that. I decided to go a little bit different because you covered cozy fantasy. So, a book that I've been meaning to read since last year, like since it was published, I've had it on TBRs before and I just never seem to get to it. And I feel like this must be my summer. I need to read it because what am I doing? I have Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. This is cozy sci fi set in a hotel in space, the Grand Abina Hotel. And I just feel like it's going to be a really kind of heartfelt, cozy time, especially because we have a manager named Carl, and he has only really known this place as a home. Apparently, he was a stowaway at one point and then ended up becoming an employee, rising the ranks to manager. And with a hotel, there's a lot of traffic. So we're going to see all types of people who've been brought to this hotel for different reasons. And it seems like there are a few mysteries a part of the hotel, all while Carl is potentially trying to figure out what he may have to do next. What if he has to leave the hotel? Can you say goodbye to your home? So I feel as though we're going to have a lot of different characters maybe going on their own journeys while having this really like lovely central character named Carl. I mean, what a sweet name. An old man named Carl. It's all I'm imagining. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I really want to read this because it kind of gives me all the cozy vibes. And I've been meaning to read more cozy sci-fi because I feel like I haven't investigated that area enough.
Yeah, that's definitely a genre I want to get more into as well, because I think that there's so much there to be had. So we'll see. I'm sure that we'll have more recommendations as we get further and further into these cozy reads. But we do need to summarize the cozy that we're currently reading, the Dallergut Dream Department Store, and that is my task today, is to summarize for you guys the 3 chapters that we read. So I will just talk to you briefly about what each chapter entailed. So chapter 4, we end up really diving into dreams that are supposed to help improve and help people get through trauma. And it can be the trauma of taking a test or military. There are a lot of different dreamers that we end up following in this chapter and get to see kind of how a dream can help with this, which I thought was really interesting. In chapter 5, we get to visit the General Assembly of Dream Makers and get to meet a lot of the players in making these dreams for people. And we got to see the business elements of dream making. So, what particular issues they're having currently within the business. And then the last chapter, we get to see these awards that they put on every year, which once again, we get to meet a lot of the players. We get to talk through some of the dreams that are most well known in the year that we're reading about. Yeah, so those are the 3 chapters that we read. If you guys have not read chapters 4, 5, and 6, you probably want to click away here because we are gonna get into spoilers after this part.
Thank you for that summary, Danny. Now we are ready to dig into this title a little bit further. And I actually want to first and foremost discuss something that you prepared us for when we were signing off with last episode, that we were going to get into more serious discussions, more serious topics. We weren't going to lose the cozy feel, but we were just going to have heavier discussions. And your summary kind of highlighted that, the idea of trauma, as well as some really like heartwarming, heartfelt tearjerker moments. I found myself tearing up a couple times, like 3 or 4 scenes, and at least one did make me well up to the point where I'm like, if I focus on the scene too long, I will start crying. This will happen. And I can't have that because I was reading this an hour before we were meeting. I can't have like puffy eyes and cheeks that are red because I was bawling my eyes out. So I held off. I held off the emotions, but totally different from the first third that we read. Do you want to discuss any of that further?
Yeah, so these scenes, speaking of all of the things that you just talked about, are, I think, what made this book. So when I was first reading this, I think the first 3 chapters of the book, I was bebopping along, having a good time. And I think in these 3 chapters, this is really, really where this book started to become a favorite of mine because it covers these really deep topics in a way that I think is refreshing. It talks about them in just an everyday, ordinary, everyone has these types of problems. No one is judging anyone for having worse trauma than someone else. And we're all using our own memories and uh, also consent to get through them. So within the first chapter, we talk about trauma dreams. And there is a dream maker named Maxis, I think it was his name.
Maxim.
Maxim, that's what it was. And he creates these dreams that people will relive over and over and over again that could potentially be the worst night of their life or could be highlighting something that make them really anxious until they have a happy reaction to it. And people are mad about it, which understandably so, because there's also we've had conversations about the fact that people don't remember going to the Dallergut Dream Department Store. They don't remember choosing these dreams. And so they were mad that they are experiencing dreams that are not they're nightmares essentially to them. One of our dreamers that we follow is someone who is literally dreaming about being re-enlisted into the military after being discharged. And it's one of his worst nightmares. And they go into this little room and talk to Delegate about this thing that they've been through. And he hands them a piece of paper that essentially shows a contract between the Dallergut Dream Department Store and these dreamers that they signed up for this. They came seeking help in conquering something that they were struggling with in their life. And this was meant to help bring back some confidence, let them leap over these fears and maybe realize their strengths in the process. And I think that the fact that we have them reliving it until they have a positive result, it shows that you have to work through, that it's not just an easy fix, it's not a one and done. This book did not take the kind of easy way out. I feel like, and I'm not going to name a title, but there have been books that I've read in the past where it's like uh, there's like an easy button for getting rid of trauma. And I feel like this book, in a cozy way, handles the fact that everyone's different and it's going to take everyone long or everyone different amounts of time to get through things and process things. And we also had people that opted out. They had originally signed this contract, came into the delegates meeting to talk through what they had signed and decided they didn't want to do it. And so there was this version of consent as well. Delegate was not trying to force people to, take these dreams and try and recover from whatever it was that they were happening to go through. But yeah, I really liked the way that it was handled within the story. So I also want to talk about like all of the little speeches and the awards because that also talks about some of the trauma, but we can get to that later.
Yes, yes, yes. We almost, I think this is the perfect episode to almost go the chapter by chapter because then we can work our way through, because there's just so much to unpack with the first chapter alone. Because as you were talking, I was like, okay, don't forget to mention this. Don't forget to don't forget to react to this, because she's bringing up great points. So yeah, I definitely want to stay in this section of the book for a little bit longer before we move on, because yeah, that was one of the first things I noticed as well. This idea that trauma is not something immediate that we can, be done with. We are carrying that with us forever, because it's also a situation where you're not erasing it. They're saying that you will live with this idea forever, but rather than seeing it as something that is bringing you down, continuing to harm you, it can be a memory saying, look how resilient I am. I've been through so much. Once you eventually get to that point, and we're not all always ready at the same point to kind of discuss those traumas, to try to get over them. And it will take longer for some than others. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I like that it was a group effort, because, when we're thinking about a complaining customer, right? Because it is this business, you handle it one-on-one, and they did separate them from the crowd as not to harm the experiences of others, which makes sense. But to have this discussion with everyone else, there was a result where, yes, some people left, they terminated their contracts. And what's kind of sad about that is there is a risk that they will forget that they terminated this contract, and they will be once again back in this room after they've signed themselves up unknowingly and, woken up forgetting to do that. So there's that cycle of trauma as well, that, you are perpetually reliving it. And if you don't, make the effort or aren't ready to ever really face it fully, you may end up finding yourself in that cycle, which is very, very, relatable and realistic. But those who stayed, at one point, Penny, who's an observer as well. And I think that that's interesting, that our narrator, or not necessarily our narrator, but the perspective we follow, often is an observer character. She is taking everything in, watching the experts kind of handle these situations. So she is our eyes. And I think she's the perfect example of someone who doesn't have all the answers, and neither do we. So that's really fascinating. She sees them cheering each other on, supporting each other in kind of a solemn way as well, saying, hey, we've made this decision. Let's support each other. It's going to be a hard road. And almost kind of trying to comfort each other, knowing that tonight we're going to have this same nightmare. We're going to have this same trauma experience. And yeah, it's a really interesting, thoughtful way of discussing those types of issues that, are quite taboo. And I think that's something too, that we see in subtle ways, that it is a taboo subject, not only in this book, but also in the real world. We don't like to discuss the idea of like mental health and supporting veterans, for instance, after what they've experienced, or anyone else, the other pressures that they have, because we see it among the staff members, because it ends up being, thrown in the rumor mill. No one wants to say it aloud or ask Dallergut or whether directly. We heard there was this like black market deal with this dream maker who's making like horrific dreams in his dark room, and it's all this sinister stuff, when in reality, the reason why he's making these dreams is so selfless and, also quite daring and scary for him to do. He's got his own doubts, so they don't like discussing it. And even those who come back and are complaining, asking for their, money back, well, one of them at least is like echoed saying, well, there are other department stores who sell dreams and they never sell anything beyond happy experiences. So how dare you? You should be following with the trend that we should just eliminate all types of negative dreams. And that's obviously also not healthy, because it's not addressing the problem, it's covering it up and not helping those who do need these trauma dreams. So I appreciated the battling back against this taboo, and just like, out of sight, out of mind. Let's not discuss this idea of trauma, and, everyone will dream happily when they return to their waking lives, that trauma will still be with them because they haven't been able to get through it. So yeah, it was such a good chapter. I really appreciated it. And I love that, yeah, these 3 chapters kind of all go together with the idea of people struggling and how dreams, sleep can be very beneficial. And there is a lot of mental health rep within these pages. So it is kind of sectioned off quite well. I I'm not prepared for how this book is going to end, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, let's move on and quickly cover this middle chapter that we ended up reading, chapter 5, where it was the General Assembly. And yet again, our observer character Penny just kind of lucks out and gets to attend this party, this meeting with some really well-known, like, A-lister dream makers. I thought it was very fascinating. And one of the A-lister dream makers happened to be Santa Claus, interestingly enough.
I know. I thought so I remember vividly when I first was reading this and it was Santa Claus, I was like, "Ooh, that was a curveball." I
Yeah,
did
I was
not
like, no,
expect Santa Claus.
not really. And they leaned in. I'm like, oh, okay, this is Saint Nick. Okay.
Yep. Noted.
Yep.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the characters that we got to meet in that scene and seeing actually one of my favorite characters in the book is introduced in that little assembly. We get to meet Boncho
Mhm.
and I just I really appreciated all of the different personalities because I do feel like all of the dream makers are individual. You even have the leprechauns that have their own like issues that they end up bringing up and they have a different viewpoint on dreams and all of them are really there to discuss a problem within the dream market, which is that a lot of dreams are being made and not picked up. So we haven't actually discussed this because we skipped it last week. We're going to talk about pre-orders and the fact that customers can pre-order dreams, which is a dream that would be tailored to that individual. So when they do this and they forget to pick it up, whether or not that be because they were out for an all-nighter and they didn't actually get any sleep, or they slept so deeply they didn't dream, like there's a whole bunch of different reasons that they wouldn't pick up a dream. Well, then that dream has an expiration date and it can't be applied to anyone else successfully because it was meant for that particular person. And all of the different dream makers have different opinions because you have some of them who that's their primary source of income is these pre-ordered dreams. And then you have others. I really liked whenever they got to Boncho's character who he creates the dreams for naps. And so a lot of these are for animals who can't sleep quite so deeply because it does put them in danger. And he still finds this to be a very important profession because they are the creatures that oftentimes get ignored. And we find out that actually Dallergut is the only one who sells Boncho's dreams within his department store. But they ask him about this issue and they're like, hey, what's your opinion? Do you have issues with pre-orders? And he's like, oh, no, I don't really deal with any of that. I just, my customers just walking off the street because they need a good
Right.
night's sleep.
They aren't going to they have pause. Like they can't really make a pre-order.
And so I really like the fact though that everyone has their own it's all very individual. It doesn't feel like a flat set of characters. We have these massive personalities all in this room together trying to solve an issue. And I also love that Dallergut is the one who kind of brings up a solution that he thinks it's very clear to everyone what the issue is. So everyone keeps saying, people aren't sleeping as much. Humans have too much to do, which was one of the things that Boncho does mention with his pets or, the animals that are coming for his dreams. They value sleep. And so they're not going out of their way to avoid taking a nap. So he doesn't have the issue of people not sleeping, and humans do. And Delegate brings up the idea of, well, your dreams aren't entertaining enough. We need to make it worthwhile for humans to take a break and dream instead of staying up and pulling an all-nighter, with various activities. And some of the dream makers get quite offended by that statement.
Yeah, and even like to even backtrack a little bit, I think that what's interesting is there was a moment where they thought their solution was, well, let's charge them ahead of time. Like let's make them like pay a deposit or whatever the case is. And Dallergut's like, that's not our policy. Like our department store, we tell them you always pay afterwards. And we see that throughout the book, where you get, a deposit of a little bit of flutter, of a little bit of, cheer or coziness or whatever the case is. And even in the trauma dreams before, you got like a huge deposit of confidence, a huge deposit of well-being, which was really lovely to see. So it shows that, sometimes in the long run, right, like these kind of like long shot investments do pay off, not only for the customer, but for the department store as well. And so the idea of suddenly charging people ahead of time doesn't sit well, because it doesn't make sense, because it is suggesting that we are here for profit beyond actually benefiting the people who need these dreams. So yeah, I loved that. And we all can very much relate to how active we are, our brains, the fact that there's so much entertainment out there, binge watching shows, staying online for too long, overthinking, right? Preparing for the next day, for to-do lists, doom scrolling. I have 100% been a victim of it, and Danny, so
Same.
have you. We've confessed to each other that we've been victims of that, and yeah, so I think that it's a very topical thing that we can relate to, this idea of, yeah, I've 100% replaced sleep with something else. I shouldn't have, but it is what it is, and now with every passing day, or at least in the next couple days, you are working on less sleep, which is just all around not good for you. So I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting perspective to see it from the idea of like the dream makers, where it's like, oh my gosh, these people, they just don't sleep. And it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there probably is a suggestion that like a general population of humans nowadays, just we're not getting enough sleep. We're not getting as much as we should, if we're being completely honest. More sleep studies are showing that every passing year. But anyways, yeah, I like that Dallergut wasn't necessarily afraid, though, to turn it back on the dream makers, as you said, saying, I mean, the solution is to make it more enticing. How about you be a bit more creative, challenge yourselves? And it was fun to just kind of compare the different perspectives, the different types of dream makers. I mean, because even Nicholas, right? Santa Claus, his business is only in December. He only works 1 month in the year, and then all the other years, he doesn't. Or you know what, actually, let's harp on the leprechauns, because I do think that there was an interesting back and forth with Dallergut, and he didn't raise his voice. I loved how there was like a specific description of how he got his point across, his frustration and his threat to the leprechauns, without ever having to, change his tone of voice. But you end up realizing that I think the leprechauns have been mislabeling their dreams on purpose. And what is kind of terrifying is they were saying that they found more profit in giving a person a dream, like sleep paralysis, where they literally cannot move. And so then when they wake up and realize that their bodies can move and they do have this freedom, that this elation that they feel is, obviously payment to the leprechauns, when that's deception. And that is terrifying, especially when what we know about sleep paralysis in general. That's a scary thing. No one ever enjoys that experience. And these little devils, these little leprechauns are troublemakers.
Yeah, they were talking about the fact that they wanted positive, so dreams are paid for with the experience behind it,
Mhm.
and not all experiences are good. So they started out their business with flying dreams, which are always sold out. So they do sell really well, but you would have people who would come back from the dream and then have a moment of loss. And so they were getting paid in loss, paid in negative feelings, which are not worth as much as something like elation or gratitude. And so that's why they were being intentionally deceptive with their people, because they knew that if I give you a really horrible scenario, they even tried to team up with Maxim at one point, because he's known to create trauma
Right.
dreams, and they're like, oh, like we could work together and we could make some things that are really traumatic and we could make a lot of money. And that's when Delegate, yeah, with his kind of quiet fury, because you could tell like it definitely impacted the room, but there
Mhm.
was a sentence, I don't remember exactly what it said, but, like, without raising his voice, he told them essentially that they would be cut from all of his stores if he found out that they were doing that ever again.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's just a really interesting to see, especially because all of the characters have different reasons for what they're doing, right? So Bancho is more about providing a service for people who often get overlooked or animals who often get overlooked. We have Maxim, who clearly has a goal in helping people who have a need. And then you have some other people who are wanting to show like how beautiful the world is. You have Nicholas, who is wanting to create joy in the world. Like they all have their own individual wants and desires to do with their dreams, which I mean, I know I've harped on that a little bit, but I love it.
No, I love it too, especially because the types of dreams that they make, it does provide us a window into who the dream maker is. And with every passing chapter, as these names are coming up and we're seeing them in the flesh, they're not just, these idols anymore like they were in chapter 1, 2, 3. It is interesting to see that they are human themselves. And there is also a suggestion of they've been inspired by something. For instance, Maxim, he is quite a solitary, sweet person, but he is just doing his best and he just needs someone to believe in him. And you can see that the others around him kind of care for him. There was a moment that we were discussing pre-recording how Nicholas, Santa Claus, in his bright home when they were all coming to the General Assembly, Maxim, who typically worked in the dark, not only because it's kind of his preference, but specifically to maintain these dreams that help people get through trauma. They're very not volatile, but sensitive to the idea of too much light. And so he has to work in the dark. So he's sacrificing some things in order to make sure he can make what, we'll call art in this world. And, he finds the lights very bright, but he's not really saying anything. And so, Nicholas just kind of hands him shades. And it's this really like small, beautiful moment. And yeah, we later on, when we get to the awards, we learn more about Kick Slumber and what inspired him to make the specific dreams that have touched so many different lives. And it's really heartfelt as well. Bancho's speech is also so heartfelt. Oh my gosh, that's where I was really like tearing up and like about to cry. And you feel for these characters, even though their names are wacky and the entire idea of this like world based on like dream capitalism is kind of crazy, but it is also just really lovely. And yeah, I really enjoyed the discussion because we discussed this last time too, that there is the mention of business. Like it truly is crafted. Obviously, Miye Lee has like designed this world where it all makes sense, but we also have the idea of not just business, but the human sentiment. And, so it balances out really, really well. And I'm just heavily invested at this point. I really do appreciate it. And that leads us into probably like among the most heartfelt chapters, which was the last one we read today. And everyone was getting excited. New Year's, right? Getting celebration for, the last day of the year. And that's also when they have their awards for things like best art, debut dream maker, and also they give the biggest award, which is for the Grand Prix. So there's just all these various words going on. And the one in particular is, which is kind of interesting, the way they design it, is that the top seller, right? So the dream maker who has sold the most, but specifically in December. So it doesn't really matter for the rest of the year, but specifically in December. And historically, Nicholas, Santa Claus, the man who works in children's dreams, Christmas dreams, he obviously wins every single year. Like he's hoping for a 15th year of winning. And I do think it's kind of funny the way they win and what the prize could be. He was saying that he was hoping it would be 5 bottles of cozy so that he could spray his furniture and just feel super cozy all winter, all year long, which honestly, that does sound glorious. But there was another kind of dark horse contender who seems to always be under the radar, slowly but surely growing in the number of dreams that they end up making and selling in December, and that is Bancho. So this is someone who is overlooked just as his dreams are overlooked, right? Just as his customers are overlooked. And yet they're also just so in need. I love the description of when Penny was trying to guess who this person is, because that's not how Dallergut's not going to just give the answer she learns. So he's giving hints and clues. And the way he describes it is Think of while everyone's out during the holidays, trying to make the most of the final days of the year. They don't want to be left out. They want to, be doing everything. They don't sleep as much. All these crazy things are going on. Well, who is left out in that equation? Who may feel even more anxious? Who may feel even more lonely? And you realize that he's talking about pets, the dogs and the cats and all the other types of pets who are often left at home while the families are going to these celebrations, going to these parties, to these outings. And oh my gosh, the example of the dog who is, kind of patchy, a bald tail, which we meet in like chapter 1 when Penny is figuring out every single floor, trying to figure out where she fits at the Dallergut Dream Department Store. We see that dog sniffing and one of Bancho's, classic, popular customers. Well, later on in this chapter, we see this dog just like anxiously waiting for its family to return. And so he ends up getting a dream, one of Bancho's dreams, which is to go on a walk with his owner. And it's just, oh my gosh, that was tearing me up. And then, of course, Bancho wins and he gives this beautiful speech. These people are eloquent. Every speech they give is so heartfelt. And I'll let you discuss the dedication, because he ends up giving a really beautiful dedication to the man who has won many years before him.
Yeah, that was a really interesting moment because we know as the readers that Nicholas has won the past 14 years. And we also know that Nicholas is not one who joins the awards. He usually, after Christmas, escapes to his cabin and kind of becomes a little bit of a hermit because he has so much work in the month of December. And so he's not there with everyone. And he was, talking about what he would do with his winnings. And so when Bancho wins, he essentially says, like, that Saint Nick was his inspiration and his role model, and that he knows without a doubt that Nicholas has provided him with food and with wood to keep him warm throughout the winter months, and that he is alive thanks to Nicholas, which just made me so sad. I cried at that part. I was like, I can't handle this. It's so good. And so to see kind of the gratitude and where his he wanted to help people. That was his goal. And he was so shocked that he would ever have won this award because he was very happy just doing what he was doing. He also thanked all of the pets. I thought that was really cute too. He starts
Yeah.
thanking all of them and he's like, "Oh, I could go on forever. I should probably stop."
He's like, thank you, Snowball. Thank you. Like all of the classic animal names. It was adorable.
And then he also thanks, Dallergut as
Mhm.
well for actually working with him and selling his streams exclusively, so or not exclusively, but being the only one who sells his streams, and so that was a very lovely moment. And then, yeah, we go into another eloquent speech with, oh, I can't remember, it's
Kick
Kick
slumber.
Slumber? Okay. Kick Slumber ends up winning the Grand Prix, and the dream like, we don't know this person, we've never, like, had any dealings with this person throughout the book, but it is the person Penny ends up voting for, that's who she thinks will win, and we learn that it's for a dream about living in an eagle's head, essentially, as they fly down from a cliff and then eventually lift their wings and fly, and it's talking about the different types of freedom that people have. And I really liked the how this, I guess, author, this dream maker, this maker of dreams, describes why they have created dreams where you get to live in shoes that aren't yours, and talks about how people have these boundaries that they make for themselves or that society makes for them, and these stoppers in life, and he wants people to be able to feel the freedom that they should have and that they will have eventually. And I really liked, I love that little, there was a really, I don't know if you want to read the quote.
Oh, I
We were
haven't.
discussing
I'm
this prior to
ready.
the episode, so I figured this quote might come up, but I just thought it was very well done.
Yeah, and so I've got the quote in front of me, and it is important to also note that Kick Slumber, his inspiration comes from being physically disabled. that he knows the limitations that it comes from, and that's where his own inspiration comes for with his dreams. So it says, Kick Slumber glances into the camera lens, then out across the room. What makes you feel you're not free? He asks to the breathless audience. Whatever it is that has you bound, whether that is a place, a time, or an outdated belief around a physical disability, please don't dwell there. Instead, seek out the things that do bring you freedom. And that is just so heartfelt, so lovely. And yeah, it just shows that like all of these dream makers are just wonderful people, and none of them really have the sole purpose of making a profit, even though we saw in the General Assembly this discussion of that, because
Yeah.
they got to make a living. I mean, Bancho has to survive, right? He has to live, even though he's willing to have like bare bones with his animals that he loves so much, and gain, the goodwill and help of others, which also demonstrates the silent hero who isn't underappreciated. I would say that everyone very much respects Dallergut and understands how much impact he has on the community. But this is yet another, person who has helped dream makers who may be underappreciated or are providing a very important element to dreams. We had Maxim earlier. No one else was taking a chance on his trauma dreams, even though we saw how helpful they are. And then also Bancho, right? Bancho thanks Dallergut because he's the only one who was really buying his, dreams. So it's kind of fascinating to also have it all come back to this one store, this one man who is, supposedly a descendant of the third disciple, and how like all together, like you can't have any of these dreams removed. Like they all have their purpose. They all make sense for this world. And yeah, this made me tear up like multiple times. The dog waiting for his family, Boncho, with his speech thanking the pets but also thanking Nicholas, Kick Slumber discussing this. They're just this is probably I would say my favorite chapter so far, just because it like was really threatening to make me cry.
Yeah. Well, we do need to wrap it up a little bit and answer our 3 questions. And I will tell you, I do have a little bit of an adjustment to the 3rd question, but I will tell you ahead of time so you can kind of be thinking about your answers. And this time I'll answer the questions first. So we always talk about what our rating is. I'm still at a 5-star. Like I nothing has changed. So I don't have much to say about that. I'm still really enjoying my reread. I really like the nuances and being able to kind of dive back into the characters. It's been a lot of fun. The second question that we always answer is who our favorite character is. And I kind of told you guys this in the discussion. My favorite character is Boncho. I love him. I think that he's great. I also really like Maxim and Dallergut. Like we just have a ton of amazing characters. It's kind of refreshing after the last several reads that we've had where all the characters suck. It's nice
Tell
to
me
have a
about
book
it.
where they don't. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed Boncho's character. I like the fact that he is very quiet and subtle, and he's not in it for the fame or the glory. He sees a need and he would like to provide. So I also relate to like wanting to be surrounded by animals. Totally could be in that boat.
Mhm.
And then the third question is always what questions we have. We do need to maybe make some predictions for the end of the book. I'm not going to do that because I've already read the end of the book. But my additional question that I will answer instead is if you were to choose a dream. So you go to sleep tonight and you have to go into the Dallergut Dream Department Store and choose a dream for yourself. What dream would you choose? So with reading the chapters that we just got through, I think I would end up choosing one of Kick Slumber's dreams because I really like the descriptions of the scenery that's had. He talks about his first dream that he ever made was the travel of a whale across the earth. And I find that so fascinating. He brought that back to the talk of freedom in the sense that whales are not free on soil, but we are not free in the ocean. Like everyone has their own boundaries. But to live in an animal's perspective, to get to see parts of the earth that we never could explore or be comfortable in as humans, I think would be I think I could live in that dream for a minute. So I think that would be my choice. What about you?
Ooh, well, so I'll answer my stuff backwards because why not? Because now that I've got the dreams in mind, I might as well get that out of the way. So I also think that Kick Slumber is a really good decision and a really good choice, but I'm going to go off and try something new and mention someone that I don't think we've referenced in either episode so far. And I'm 99% sure I'm saying the right dream maker, but we have, met quite a few. I think is it Wawa Sleepland, whoever is the one who's known for making long dreams, like extended ones. So they're one, like very far few in between. And then also they are just so massively expensive because of how much work they are. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Dallergut says we can't even sell your dreams
Yeah.
because of how expensive they are. And you typically expect payment ahead of time because of how, elaborate they are. Because I like a good long dream. Like I want to be there. I want to like experience everything around me because especially those ones I tend to also remember and I'm like that was
Mm.
wild. Like that felt like it lasted years and in reality it probably was like what 30 seconds of my sleeping time. So I think that would be really fun and interesting type of perspective as long as it was a positive like, good dream. Now, as far as a favorite character, I think that especially thanks to you mentioning how many duds we've had in this category, specifically for, main character, first person POV, or at least like the view that we're getting this from, we have to highlight Penny
Yeah.
because she is a really great, solid, unobtrusive main character to follow. I feel as though we notice her presence, but not overly done. She actually kind of takes a second, almost like a secondary character role at times because we're, enraptured by the dream makers, by the customers, and by Dallergut and everything else that goes in between that you kind of forget, oh, it's thanks to Penny who got this job at the very beginning that we even have access to this world. And she also has her subtle kindnesses. Like we see her helping out Maxim. And I don't know, dare I say there might be a bit of a romantic subplot, or at least Maxim seems to, have, found, some feelings for her and maybe she has feelings for him, vice versa. I don't mind that. I think that's very adorable. So if that continues, I'm fine with it. But even when they're trying to get the projector ready so that everyone can watch the New Year's celebration, the awards, we have Dallergut struggling because he's a Luddite and he doesn't really understand technology. And so there's this very brief, I think it's like 2 sentences, where Penny goes over and I think she's like bending over, pretending to grab something like coffee or whatever. And she just quickly, subtly switches to plugs. And then she's like, oh, weird. I guess it's just suddenly working. And Dallergut says, if only Weather could see me, look how good I am. And he just accepts it that he's done, even though it's literally been 30 minutes and it still wasn't working. So, and she just allows him this win. And I think that demonstrates how perfect for the job and the environment she's in that she does fit really well with them because she
Mhm.
also is doing these small kindnesses that it doesn't impact anyone, but it makes someone else's day easier or makes them feel a little bit better. So you know what? Penny appreciation. We got to give her some appreciation. So I'll do that this time. And then as far as my star rating, this is feeling like a 5 star. I'm loving it so much. I probably could have said 5 stars last time, to be honest, because I really did love those first 3 chapters. But this really cinched it for me. This confirmed that you can get really deep in this book and all the feels. I mean, if you're starting to make me cry, I feel like that's a good indicator that this is a 5 star read. And now I'm like, could I buy the book already? But I'll wait. We're going to finish the book. We'll finish our discussion. But this is probably going to be something I'm going to add to my shelves too.
Yay! And the second book, which comes out this month. Woo!
Yes, but you know what? That wraps up this episode. So, for those of us who are still here, if you're still listening, this is your reminder that we're finishing the book next episode. So, if you join us next Friday, make sure that you read the last 3 chapters and 2 epilogues. And then we'll meet you here, same time, same place. Thanks for being here on our journey with us and happy dreaming. Bye, friends.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Reading for Content. Be sure to check the description for a schedule of our upcoming reads for this season. For reminders and other updates, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Not Reading for Content. Where else can the listeners find you, Leandra?
I have a booktube and an Instagram. My booktube is at Leandra the TBR0, and my Instagram is at Leandra_the TBR0. How about you, Danny?
I have the same platforms. Both can be found at danny.dabbles. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to tune in next Friday for our next episode.